We will call the White Bear Township Town Board meeting to order for January 18th, 2023. First item on the agenda is the approval. Patrick, we have some additions.
Yep, Mr. Chair, if it pleases the board, please add under consent 5N, the temporary on-sale liquor license. No further changes to the agenda from that point, sir.
What about 5,
5-0.
5?
It's not on the paper. It
not
came
on-
in the email.
Which one was that?
Special town board meeting.
Oh, yeah. Add 5-0.
Well, maybe we won't have it then.
No, you will. Yeah. Special town board meeting for next Wednesday, 5 p.m. to consider liquor license for Hockey Day, Minnesota.
All right, board, have any other changes?
No.
Hearing none, I need a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Move to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries. Item 3 is, I need a motion to approve payment of the bills. Stevie, sign
I
up.
signed off on the payment of the bills. Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries. Item number 4 is the approval of the minutes from December 5th, 2022. Anybody have any changes?
Mr. Chair, I had two changes which I shared with Pat. Minor little changes. Were those corrections made?
They were.
Okay,
Thank you,
then.
Mr. Ruzick.
And I'll move to approve the minutes of December 5th, 2022 with the minor corrections that were provided to the township clerk.
Second.
Motion made and second. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? All right, item 5 is a consent agenda. We have about 15 of them.
Thanks.
The board wishes to review any of them, otherwise I need a motion to approve.
I will.
Mr. Chair, you're going to have to pull 5B and the 5N, the liquor licenses, because the licenses aren't actually being granted to the Goat Saloon or to
Morrissey.
Morrissey, thank you. The license is actually being granted to the nonprofit that will then contract with those two to provide liquor services.
And I don't think we have a nonprofit named yet, do we?
That's right.
Correct.
Is this something we should just omit? Or do you want?
Yeah, to table.
Table?
I'd rather table it.
To our special meeting.
Special meeting, yes, we're on top of it.
Yep, we got it.
All right.
All right, with that, do I have a motion to approve?
I will move to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Then do you want an actual motion to table those two for
No, we just.
Wednesday?
No, you just,
Okay. All right, moving on. Item 6 is old business. We have none. Item 7, we have 3 public hearings. The first is Ramsey County Parks and Rec. I need a motion to waive the reading for this before we begin.
I'll move to waive the reading of the notice. It was properly published in the press.
Second.
Motion's made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Who's going to take this one?
I say, Chair, if you,
I need a motion to open the public hearing.
I'll move to open the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, now you can go.
thank you, Chair. Good evening. We have a conditional use permit amendment request before you tonight. This is for the Otter Lake off-leash dog area. This is located in the park along Otter Lake Road. The county is looking to expand and make some improvements to their current setup for the park. This is in alignment and meeting the goals of some of their countywide parks plans that they've approved over the last few years. There would be 2 phases to this project. Phase 1 would include accessibility updates, a new concrete entrance, new concrete pads for benches, trash receptacles, as well as some grading and site retention work. Phase 2 of this project would include potentially relocation of the small dog area within the site, further improvements to the trails, fences, and signage on the site, and then a new water fountain located near the site entrance. This use, an off-leash dog area, is a conditional use within the open space zone, which the park is zoned as, hence why a CUP is required for this amendment. There is no use-specific standards or requirements, though, so the conditions within the conditional use permit basically govern this use on the site. The CUP was originally issued in 2004 for the park, and then it was amended back in 2011. The CUP criteria and findings are outlined in your staff report. This was reviewed by both staff as well as the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission reviewed this at their December meeting. They did recommend approval with a number of conditions, which you also have outlined in your staff report. The options before you tonight are to either approve, deny, or table if you have further review or study to conduct. Again, the Planning Commission recommendation was to approve. There are conditions which I'll state from the staff report are: 1, the project shall be built according to the Phase 1 plans submitted and reviewed with this request. Condition 2, Phase 2 is approved subject to review of the plans by the Township and Planning Commission. 3, the project shall secure any applicable local, state, or federal permits and then comply with the requirements of said permits. 4, the project shall comply with any applicable local, state, and federal rules as well as regulations. And then 5, the applicant shall pay any fees or escrows associated with the request. I would note our applicant is here tonight to present an overview of the project. If you want me to go through that now, we can, or we can go through any questions the board has.
First off, did you leave off number 6, fees with escrow associated with the request?
That is condition 5.
Excuse me, guys.
Okay, it must be,
I don't know if we're involved in what you're doing here, but I cannot hear.
Oh, God, I thought the speakers worked.
They're working.
I can't understand of anything.
we'll talk, we'll try to talk louder.
Thank you, appreciate it.
What page were you reading those?
Keep going.
It'd be the last page of the memo.
Okay, why does it differ from the one I had?
Nope.
Yeah, these 5 differ from the 6 that were written down in the other one.
I would say, did you have a condition stating the previous CUP was still in effect? Is that the one missing?
All right, Steve, any questions, comments?
No. I did listen through the Planning Commission. The only real question, conversation had to do with Phase 2, which is a design that hasn't been finished yet, but you can talk into that, I believe, correct?
Scott?
Nope.
Did the Planning Commission have specifications of what they're doing? All we have is an aerial of the existing park.
The plans, I'm not sure why they weren't included in your meeting materials, but they did have plans and they did review them at the meeting. And then our county representative can go through some of the project details if you wish, either now or after the public hearing.
Yeah, I guess that would be the question. At least the maps that showed the changes that are being proposed, I think that would be beneficial to these
Correct.
two.
Yeah, because obviously, I don't, no clue what.
Yeah, I noticed they weren't included in your packet earlier today, so.
All right, well, does the board have any other questions?
No, maybe Mr.
staff?
Yankee can address that after he's done.
All right, hearing none from the board, I need a motion to open up for public comment.
I'll motion to open this hearing up for public comment.
Second.
Motion made, second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Mr. Yankee, would you mind coming up and, I don't know if you have the actual sheet that shows the modifications? Because all I've got is a aerial view of the existing park.
All right, good evening, everyone. I do have a snapshot.
You want to state your name and address for the record?
My name is Scott Yankee. I'm the Planning and Development Director with Ramsey County Parks. I do have a snapshot of some of the entrance improvements and an overall plan that I can go over in my presentation. I do not have a full plan set with me here tonight, but
Okay.
I believe you do have that on file at your township office. All right. Well, thank you, Chair, other town board members, township staff. I'm privileged to be here tonight to go over the Otter Lake Off-Leash Dog Area project. So overall, I just wanted to kind of provide just a little background information that led us up to the design component. So you can see on your screen that, so there's a number of things that we looked at right away that our improvement plan was based off. So our system-wide off-leash dog area plan, we developed that and completed that in 2018. And the three major items that came out of that process was, one, engagement, standardization of improvements, and a guide for future improvements. So that's really what that plan was for, was to guide us. As far as the engagement that was completed on that, part of that project, we held 3 public meetings with off-leash dog area volunteer groups, and that included presentation at each meeting as well as a design charrette. So we included the public in on design idea accommodations. We completed an online survey. We received 1,000+ responses on our survey, as well as we had a public plan review prior to the plan being finalized. So that was a lengthy process, but really that is what's guiding our decision-making right now for the improvements. The 3 off-leash dog area locations that we are looking at improving right now is the one in Bald Eagle, the Otter Lake off-leash dog area, Battle Creek off-leash dog area, as well as the Rice Creek North off-leash dog area. So all those are going to be included in both Phase 1 and Phase 2, depending on funding levels. So our main objective of this project was to, 1, create accessible routes and entrances, improve trail conditions, drinking water for people and their pets, small dog areas, and amenities and signage. So that was actually the objective for both Phase 1 and Phase 2. Our phased improvements, just so you know, when Phase 1 and Phase 2 start. So Phase 1, we're looking at starting this spring, as soon as the snow goes and ground conditions are conducive for the project activity. So our budget for Phase 1 is only $200,000. So we're trying to stretch as much as we can out in Phase 1, and that's why we have future phases already programmed. We do have money that we are requesting through our legacy amendment funds to accompany Phase 2, and that's approximately $800,000, and that'll be split up in 2 years, but that will cover most of the remaining items that we have. There may be additional phases beyond that. It's too early to tell at this point, and again, it's really funding dependent. Next slide, please. So this slide, I want to just kind of go over. So the graphic that you see on here it shows what we're looking at doing in both Phase 1 and Phase 2. So it's an overall graphic on that. But Phase 1 improvements, can you zoom out just a little bit? There we go. So Phase 1 improvements are really geared more for accessible improvements, for entry improvements into the off-leash dog area. We're looking at making surmountable, accessible curb entrances that comply with ADA requirements, as well as improved maintenance vehicle entrance, maintenance gates. Right now, accessible entrances right now. The existing entrance at the off-leash dog area is not ADA accessible. So our goal on this one is to make it ADA accessible so all people of all ages and all abilities can use the off-leash dog area, as well as to put some additional conduits in to kind of set the stage for Phase 2 on that. So the future phase, or Phase 2, we're looking at adding water to each of the locations. We're looking at reconfiguring or adding accessible trails throughout each location, and then the addition of more site amenities, wayfinding signage throughout, and then accessible picnic tables and benches in key areas and locations. So if you want to zoom in on that graphic again, you can kind of see how those those different components will take into effect. As you can see, the entrance improvements for phase one is just right at the very entrance of that one. Then the graphic also shows some of the improvements that we're looking at in phase two throughout the park, throughout the off-leash dog area, as well as the existing small dog area. Right now, we're currently showing it in the location that it's at right now because that's where it will remain until phase two. The proposed relocation for the small dog area is actually moving that up to the north end. It's more conducive for small dogs, as well as the existing small dog area will be combined and enlarged for the larger dog area at that time. Next slide, please. So as we're talking about specific phase one improvements, so this is just a snapshot of what we're actually looking at doing for phase one. So you can see we're looking at removing the existing, as what I call them, bullpen areas for entrance ingress and egress from the off-leash dog area. And what that will allow to do is it's one, we're setting it up for the small dog area as well as the future phases on that. There's going to be new concrete pads. The bullpen areas or the gate entrance, it will be conducive for ADA accessibility, so you have clean, smooth travel without. And then we're looking at making some minor fence modifications for phase one, and then there will be additional fence modifications for phase two as we expand the work throughout the off-leash dog area. Beyond that, next slide, please. At that, it ends my presentation, so I am open for any questions or comments.
So tonight, we're really interested in getting the phase one piece off the ground. Is that what we're really attempting?
Yeah, so for tonight, the county is asking for approval of the CUP for phase one, as well as phase two, with the condition that we will be submitting our development plans for township review prior to any construction solicitations or any work happening on the site.
Yeah, I'm comfortable myself with phase one. It's the phase two without the unknowns of what you're really up to that we're the concerns. You know, it's a very popular, in my opinion, very popular place for people to bring their dogs. It has posed some traffic issues for turning in and out of there. As part of phase two, is there any possibility they can look at how the entrance is into that park also?
At this point, we have not heard that there were turning problems for going into the off-leash dog area or going out. That would actually be beyond the scope of our project, but we would be able to work with our Public Works Department to see if there's any improvements that could be made at that point. But at this point, we had not anticipated any of those things, but we can coordinate.
I bring that up because changing the basic park brings in a better attraction for more people, and right now it already is a little busy, but it's on a curve. And so as we move forward with development, I think that is something that needs to also be looked at, is the turning in and out of that park area. Coming north on Otter Lake Road is not the real issue. It's the people coming from the other direction, which is almost at the county line almost. So, and plus Otter Lake Road is, that interchange just north of there is expected to change with the entrance and exits from the freeway. So it's going to only get better. So phase one, I'm very comfortable with what you presented for phase one. I think it's a good improvement. It's just I have some issues as it moves forward with further development that I want you to have in talking into planning stages.
Steve, does that trail that's proposed go that far?
No, the trail does not. The trail is to
Stops
the
south of that.
south of there.
Okay.
But, you know, you are not really in on the necessarily the highway interchanges that are going to take place north of there. That's in development with the MnDOT. And so this road becomes more of an arterial road than it is already. And so the more development in this park is going to increase, hopefully, participation, but it also increases the traffic. And so that's
Yeah,
on
and
the road.
then again, I do want to kind of reiterate what our improvements are for phase 2. We're not expanding the off-leash dog area, the limits of where it's at right now. So everything is contained within the same area. The phase 2 improvements are to enhance the existing off-leash dog area. Currently, there's no trails throughout, so there's times where it become inaccessible for certain people to walk through there. So there will be minor trails throughout that. And then the relocation of the small dog area with some of the signage and other amenity improvements. That's really what phase 2 is about, in addition to a potable water source. On that, the whole purpose of presenting and going for the approval of the COP to include phase 1 and phase 2, because we have done that in the past, for example, at Tamarack Nature Center, where it allows it minimizes the number of times that I would need to come back here, but also I know that we have not started design development within phase 2, so I can't really give a lot of specifics on that because we're going to be diving into that work here later this summer for at least initiating that component. But
Would phase 2 be considered then 2024?
my guess is implementation of phase 2 would likely be within spring of 2024. Just by the time we get through
This
plans.
may be a question for our attorney, but I don't know if I feel real comfortable a conditional use permit and only seeing specs for phase 1 and phase 2 is a year away. And we can't even hold the permit open for that long, I don't believe.
No, you can't, but you're only approving an amendment for the first phase. Not approving, am I wrong, Evan, or are we approving amendment for both phases?
So they're requesting both phases.
Okay.
One option, if you guys do have hesitation or heartburn with both, is you could approve the first phase, and then phase 2 they'd have to come back for once they're done with the plans. So it'd just be a future amendment.
Well,
That's what I'd prefer.
no offense, but Tamarack Nature Center, I was asking for a complete concept plan 20 years ago, and they keep adding on and adding on. So I know how these phases go. They get moved or pushed or added or changed. So Scott, I don't know how you feel about it, but when we're approving something, we like to see what's in front of us, not what's going to be in front of us. So I don't see how, and Chad, you may be able to expand on that. I don't see how we can approve a phase 2 that we have no plans for.
Well, you could approve the concept, but I see your point. The point is you want to see more concrete terms.
As much as I hate to see Ramsey County have to come back through the process again, this is extending this project out another year and a half, and then it's just all of a sudden going to go through as a staff recommendation. I don't know. I don't feel comfortable with that.
No. Again, I understand what you're trying to accomplish in both phases. The second one would be a nice enhancement also, but it's speculative at best when it's going to happen, and I like more concrete details. And again, the park site itself includes the entrance, not necessarily in the plan that you're going to, but by the time phase 2 comes around, you may have better needs for entrances that should be considered at the same time.
Okay.
That's my view.
All right. Thanks, Scott. Is there anyone else here that wishes to speak to this issue? I know we have a few residents here. I'm sure you're all here for your road improvements, but hearing none?
I've got a question.
You want to come up to the podium, please? You need to state your name and address.
Good evening. My name is Donald Williams, 5734 Meadowview Drive, which, for those of you who are not familiar with the dog park area, If you want to go to the boat launch and try to launch your boat and leave your headlights on, they're right in my back windows. So I'm probably the closest person aside from my neighbor, Paul. I've been there since the dog park was originally improved and installed. I don't recall if I spoke to it at the time, but I was very supportive of it because my neighbors wanted it. Looked like a good thing to do. It has turned out to be a good thing for the neighborhood. The people that use the dog park are overwhelmingly responsible people. They take care of the area. They're pretty quiet. It's fun to see the dogs hang out the back windows of the car and anticipate the fun that they're going to have. I apologize, I got here late tonight, and I've got quite a bit of documentation here that I picked up off the table, but I'm not finding what exactly Ramsey County wants to do now.
I see. Unfortunately, I missed that presentation. So if you want, we can certainly go through that.
Okay. Yeah, because the only beef that I've had over the years, and my residence there does go back almost 40 years. When we moved in, that was a sad little place across the road where the people that primarily used it were drug dealers, I think. And I chased them out of there a number of times. I called the sheriff a number of times. And over the years, we've had a lot of improvements, and it's a much nicer area now. But like I say, I got the letter. The letter didn't tell me anything or give me any reference about what was going on, and I'm very interested about any changes. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I think, Don, if you want to see what the changes are, I think you could probably meet with staff versus us going through the whole presentation again.
And that'd be fine, but if there's going to be any kind of a vote tonight, I'd like to have a chance to look at it before the vote.
Well, do you even understand the difference between the phase 1 and phase 2? Because that's probably what we're all only going to be voting on tonight.
On the TV is an overview of what they're looking to do for phase 1. Basically, it's accessibility updates. So this is a zoomed-in shot of the entrance to the actual dog area itself. There's some new concrete work being done. Eventually, they're going to be adding some new benches into the site. They're also going to have concrete pads for, I believe, trash receptacles. And then they're going to do some overall grading and site restoration on the site. So.
It sounds like they're improving what's already.
Correct. They're not expanding the footprint. They're not, tearing up anything outside of the current dog area.
I would have one request.
We're going to have to ask you to go back up to the mic so we can pick it up for the minutes.
Yeah. I'd have one request to go along with any improvements. I think the hours of operation need to be prominently displayed and along with that enforced. I've had no problems whatsoever with the dog park people. If they come in at 6 a.m. in the morning before the park's supposed to be open, they're pretty quiet. The guys launching boats to go hunting, not so much. And when hunting season starts, they're in there at 4:30, 5, trying to get out there, be first on the lake. And my understanding of what the hours of operation are for county parks is that's before they're open.
Maybe Mr. Yankee can respond to that if you'd like to come up. I guess I'm not sure if there's a sign out there or not, but.
There are multiple signs. The only thing that talks about hours of operation is up by the dog park, not by the boat launch.
All right, Mr. Yankee, are you prepared to answer that or not? Because of the launch?
I can answer some of it, maybe not all of it.
All right, hi again. Chair, other town board members, township staff. So regarding the hours for that, I can't really talk about the boat launch hours because I need to talk with our director of operations that runs our maintenance unit as far as the hours for the boat launch. As far as the hours for the off-leash dog area, that falls under the ordinance that we have. We did make a change to our ordinance last year. That was kind of a long, intensive project, but that was revamping very, very old ordinances and bringing it up to today's standards. One of the components in there was addressing hours. Historically, our regional parks, or all of our parks within Ramsey County, they were in an old system where it was a half an hour before sunrise and a half an hour after sunset. Now that can get it can get confusing at times, or there are some gray areas, but we have now moved over to a designated time. So the parks will be open at a certain time in the morning and they'll close at a certain time at night. I cannot remember what the opening time is, but I believe the time at night is likely 10 p.m. I would still have to go back and look at that, but we are rolling out a very large signage project through all of our regional parks and county parks, and that is updating a lot of our signage, our rules, and a lot of that was mainly as an outcome for our new ordinance, because there is new rules, our updated rules, there's new times, so those will be posted throughout, and we're looking at starting those sign improvements this year. It will likely take one or two phases just to complete all of our regional parks. So as far as on times, that's what we're looking at right now. But as far as the boat launch, I would really need to go to confirm that time. I don't want to list an inaccurate time.
Something that the town likes to see, and I don't know if it's down there now, but usually any signage or monuments have the White Bear Township logo on them. Now, if that on there now, do you know?
Yes, I believe it is.
Is
On
it?
the wood sign, I believe it says White Bear Township.
Okay.
Yeah,
Ramsey County Regional Park, White Bear Township.
Okay.
I am 99.
I think it might be on there, but I would have to verify to make
I'm
sure.
just saying, if they're going to start replacing signs, we'd like to see that continue.
Okay. We wouldn't be replacing the monument sign, so that would stay the same, because that's just the name of the area on that one. So the signs that we're looking at and replacing mainly deal with large kiosk signs, trail signs, or other rule signs, and that would also include the off-leash dog area as well as the boat launch. So there's it will be signs appropriately placed where they need to be placed on site for best viewing.
All right, I know, Mr. Williams, I probably didn't quite answer your question, but Patrick, I know obviously this is Ramsey County Sheriff's area to patrol. Has this ever been brought up in your meetings, the dog park?
Our dog park, no.
So obviously they haven't had a lot of complaints down there to require a squad?
Specifically.
Of course, would this be under,
Boat and water. That's what it would be under.
or our, I can't think of his name, our animal control, Mario.
Oh, yeah, I don't think so, because the hours of the park would be enforced by sheriff or DNR through Ramsey County.
All right, well, I'm sure, Mr. Williams, we can get an answer for you for the exact opening time. The launch, I gotta believe, back to whatever the Ramsey County Parks designates for launch times is what they're supposed to abide by, but you can only patrol so much, so. And I don't know, obviously, I haven't fished that lake in probably 4 or 5 years, but is it just busy in the summer, or is it winter also, ice fishing?
There's not much fishing that goes on. Primarily, the boat launch is recreational. But when hunting season comes up, the northern part of Otter is in a different county.
Thanks, Mr. Yonke.
So they launch from the boat launch and go north.
Right.
At least they're supposed to.
All right, well, if you want to, if you want to contact staff, we can get you those exact openings and closings. And then I know Patrick is our direct connection to the Ramsey County Sheriff. They meet, once
This month,
once a
tomorrow's
month?
the day.
So we can have them bring that up too, just so it's on the radar for you. All right, anybody else wish to speak to this? Hearing none, I need a motion to close the public portion.
I'll move to make a motion to close the public portion of the hearing.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, does this board have any other questions of Evan?
No, I don't.
All right, hearing none. Steve, you were at the Planning Commission.
I was, and their recommendation was to also approve Phase 2, subject to the review of the plans of the Township and Planning Commission. But I'm not comfortable with that as we discussed tonight. So I'd like to make a motion to approve Phase 1 as recommended, that the project shall be built according to the Phase 1 plans submitted and reviewed, and that the project shall secure the applicable local, state, federal permits and comply with requirements. Project shall comply with any applicable local, state, and federal rules and regulations, and any fees and escrows associated with the request, and not approve Phase 2.
Steve, do you want to have condition 2 state that any future phases would require additional amendments to the CUP?
Yes,
Would that suffice?
yes. I think that's the best.
All right, that work for you, Scott?
Works. I'll second that.
All right, motion's made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, that motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Yonke. Thank you, Mr. Williams. All right, moving on. We have another public hearing. This one is for improvement 2022-5 street improvements. This is Gilfin Lane, Greenhaven Drive, Moon Lake Circle, Crescent Curve, Meadowlands Drive, North Birch Lake Boulevard, and Birch Bend Lane. Again, I need a motion to waive the reading.
I'll move to waive the reading that was properly published in the paper.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, then I need a motion to open up the public portion.
I'll make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? All right, Larry, you going to go over this for us?
Sure will. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. I'm here to talk about Gilfillan area street improvements. We gave a similar presentation last week to the residents. I see some familiar faces here. So that you mentioned some of the streets, but it includes the streets you see on your screen here. The total length of the project is 1.8 miles in length. You can see the pavement ratings there. They're originally constructed in 1998 to 2001. So right about this time frame in its life cycle is the time frame where we would look at a mill and overlay type project. All the streets in this neighborhood have concrete curb and gutter. Some streets have sidewalk, and it has varying street width. I'll go back here. This project encompasses residential property primarily, but there's also some commercial property on Meadowlands Drive, including the Cub Foods and some of those other commercial businesses there. It also includes the church off of Greenhaven Drive. We completed a feasibility study, and as a part of that feasibility study, we take soil borings beneath the roadway to determine the soil conditions underneath the roadway. We also take cores of the pavement to see the condition of that pavement. We do a utility evaluation, and we sent out questionnaires to the public to solicit feedback on what they're seeing on their streets. Based on that information, you can see the cores on the screen there. The core on the bottom of the screen, bottom right, is a core that mostly encompasses the neighborhood. So it's really a really solid core, which is good for pavement, mill and overlay. It has the structural strength to support the equipment that would grind off the surface and then pave over. The core on the left is part of Greenhaven Drive from 96 up to Crescent Curve. And you can, it's somewhat hard to see, but there's somewhat a void or a hole in the middle of that core that tells us that it wouldn't have the structural strength to support a mill and overlay. So for this project, we're recommending reclamation from Highway 96 up to Crescent Curve, and then the rest of the project was what we anticipated, a mill and overlay type project. So as a part of the feasibility study, we performed cost calculations for the project. We looked at how this project would be funded, computed assessments, and went through a preliminary schedule for the project. So again, we're recommending a mill and overlay for the bulk of the project. That again encompasses grinding down 1.5 to 2 inches of the pavement depth and resurfacing. That will seal up the cracking that's currently occurring and should provide a good product for the next 15 to 20 years. Reclamation is grinding all the pavement down, mixing it with the base underneath and forming a new base layer for full new pavement for Greenhaven Drive from 96 up to Crescent Curve. We have some minor utility repairs on storm sewer. We'd also look at repairing any curb and gutter that's damaged or has settled or is cracked. We look at sidewalk repair and bringing our sidewalks up to Americans with Disabilities Act standards. And then we would have any restoration to any driveways if we do have impacts along that curb line that are in a driveway. We'd have to restore those driveways as well. So again, here's our findings. Mill and overlay for most of the project is what we expected through our pavement management planning. Reclamation for Greenhaven Drive up to Crescent Curve. The minor curb repairs, recommended sidewalk repairs, and pedestrian ramps. And then we have included North Birch Lake Boulevard as a part of the project. And that's near the area, but off of Centerville Road. And we've broken out the costs separately for that roadway. We, as a part of this process, it's a border street with the city of White Bear. And we look to them to help fund the project, and they're not in a position right now to help fund that project. So tonight, as you're considering things and you're looking to move forward, like you to consider what you want to do with North Birch Lake Boulevard, whether you want to keep it in the project and look for reimbursement from the city at a later point, or remove it from the project when the city's in a better position to help support us with the cost for that part of the project. Public comments, we received a number of comments through the process, and there were these were some of the themes that we heard. Some speeding on Greenhaven Drive. We talked about that at our neighborhood meeting last week, and if the board chooses, we could look at doing some bump outs in strategic areas, or we can look at it through the design process. You can decide later, but we can look at doing some bump outs to help curb speeding on Greenhaven Drive. Parking on Greenhaven as well, primarily around the church activities, was a concern we heard through the public comments. In some cases, overgrowth and sightlines were a concern. Curb repair concerns and drainage issues are always come up when we ask for comments on these type of projects. So I'll get into the costs, and you can see we put the costs together both for the full project, but pulling out on North Birch Lake Boulevard. And so when we add all the costs together, we're looking at a project of $1.67 million for this area. Again, this is a 1.8 mile project. The overall street costs, you can see, are nearly 1.6. The accessible costs are 1.4 million of that total. When you add North Birch Lake Boulevard, nearly 1.5 of that. So this is mainly a street project. We have divided the area into accessible units for the entire neighborhood, and we come up with 203.5 units on the Gilfillan area, and then 15 units for North Birch Lake Boulevard. And then we're recommending a preliminary assessment rate of $4,000 per unit for this type of project. So this is, we have two maps for this project. This is the map showing the Greenhaven, Gilfillan area. So you can see on the larger parcels, like Cub Foods, for example, in the church, you assigned multiple units for that frontage to give them an equivalent, portion of the project based on their frontage. There are a number of areas that are open areas primarily around Greenhaven Drive and some on Meadowlands Drive that we assigned Township allocation to those because they're more green area. This is North Birch Lake Boulevard, or Birch Lake Boulevard North, and on the north side is Township residents, and they have private streets off of that roadway. On the south is apartments that are within the city of White Bear. So that frontage along the roadway on the north side, we compute 7.5 units for that frontage on the north side. And so then you divide that by the total number of properties within that private driveway network.
Larry, how many properties on the south side on White Bear?
Same, 7.5
7.5.
units. Okay, so this is a funding source table here. So in total, we're looking at, with the $4,000 rate, assessments of $874,000. Township funds of $617,850. And then the water utility, sanitary utility, and storm utility pick up some other costs for some of those stormwater, water main, and sanitary sewer improvements. So our schedule tonight, we're having holding the public hearing. If this project moves forward tonight, we would begin preparing plans and specifications for the project and bring those to the neighborhood in late February or early March. The town board would then accept the plans in March, and we'd bid a project, bid opening a roughly April-ish timeframe, award a contract in May, and begin construction in June or July. Communications on all these projects, we like to think we're communicating with the residents. We've had 2 neighborhood meetings so far. We've had the questionnaires so far. But if this project moves forward, there'll be more communication, including a newsletter with contact information and information about the schedule and some frequently asked questions that we normally see on these types of projects. If you do have concrete work or street work right in front of your driveway, you may see some concrete notices delivered to your property to alerting you to the fact that we want to replace that concrete in front of your driveway, which may mean we have to do it at half at a time or parking alongside your curb for a period of time where that concrete can harden and cure properly. So we have other communications as well. We have the township website, which is, if you go on the township website and put that link in, you can see information, including our full feasibility report that we prepared. And if the project goes to construction, you can sign up for daily updates on the construction. Of course, there'll be contact information if you do have a concern for your property. There'll be a construction inspector that you can call and talk to and make sure your concerns are addressed. So next steps tonight is the public hearing. And we're looking for actions tonight to order the improvements if the board so desires. And that requires a 4/5 votes. With only 3 members of the board, that means all need to vote in favor of ordering the improvements. And then authorizing the preparation of plans and specifications. We would like direction on Birch Lake Boulevard North from you as you're deliberating. And I can answer any questions.
Larry, can you back up to the assessment breakdown? Right there for North Break, yeah. If we were to carry the city, how much of that cost would we have to finance?
Well, the total cost for North Birch Lake Boulevard is $86,000.
I don't think that's split in half, is it?
Then that would have to be split in half.
It would?
I mean, we would, the city share should be roughly $40,000.
Okay.
You can see some of our utility improvements in here. So roughly $40,000.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Chad, but we don't have the authority to assess them, do we?
Correct.
So how would that work for us to set up an agreement for them to pay us back?
JPA, yeah, thanks.
Has there been discussion with the city about this?
Yes.
Up to what point, where are they at? We don't have it in our plans for 2023.
Yes.
That where
I wasn't the person directly talking to them, but through other staff, city or township staff, they're not in a position this year, and they could be in the future.
Okay, so
It was somewhat vague.
very vague.
As from
So, yeah.
secondhand, so.
So if we proceed, we might as well continue talking about North Birch Lake Boulevard. If we proceed, we are proceeding on our own, hoping for the best resolution with the city.
There's nothing to say you couldn't negotiate JPA now and simply defer payment in the future.
Well, we've had some issues with the city on other road projects, so I don't feel real comfortable without having some sort of guarantee or something in writing. I don't want to float a note that maybe someday they'll, help us out.
I understand.
That makes sense.
So what's a time frame to have this dialogue with the city with the possibility of a JPA? Is it a month, 2 months?
Well, give us a direction and we'll enter into
what
discussion.
generally?
from now.
I mean, it's hard to say. I've never talked directly to the city, so I really
I have.
can't say. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well,
Well, we're also dealing with brand-new staff, mayors, council members, so it's a whole kind of a new field over there, so.
Engineering's still the same. Public works.
If the board would like us to continue to proceed with it we can pursue that. And then, as we're getting closer to bidding, or we can bid it as an alternate. And if we haven't reached an agreement by the time that award has taken place, then we can omit that or not select that alternate with the contractor. That's an alternative. Another alternative is there's other streets along Centerville Road that are going to be coming up in the next few years that we could delay this. I know we did get a comment, written in comment today, asking the board to do the project with this cycle for one of the residents in that neighborhood.
my question on pulling it and delaying it with another project, that's an area that we'll have no other work to do right in that neighborhood there, would we? If we don't do it with
Constellation is
Constellation,
another roadway that's
commercial to the north.
to the north. Yep.
And is that in the near term? Don't know.
Nearer, yeah.
Nearer.
I'd have to look at my book. The
Okay.
pavement book.
Would that hurt our bidding power by eliminating that street? It's only,
It's only a small portion of
Right.
it. Maybe a little bit.
Oh, that increases the price if we don't put it with a bigger project, because it's a
Yeah.
standalone project then.
But I like the idea of bidding as an alternate because
too.
it's easy enough to take off the table without getting too involved in this. And if staff and the attorney can work up a JPA, that'll, if they're willing to do that avenue, then we can proceed with it. At least we'll have something written down that we can eventually go back to them and say, hey, you got to help us out here.
I like that idea.
Scott?
That was sort of what I was thinking along the same lines. We're talking about what the plan is right now, and if we agree to this, to the feasibility, then you go to the next step, which we're going to review and decide whether or not we're going to go forward. And the big kicker is going to be when we get the bids in. Then we really decide whether or not this is going to happen. And I think it makes sense to include now, although I did have a question. You showed core samples on the other streets and this, that. How do the core samples look there? Still okay for a mill and overlay?
Yes.
Okay. So I would think that we would want to continue keeping it in here. If you can start the conversation and at least get a temperature check, can we assess interest if it's over a couple of years' payments?
Again, it's a JPA.
Okay, just
Negotiate-
asking.
You can negotiate in terms you want.
Okay. But later on, when it comes to the actual bidding, we may decide that for whatever reason, it just to not include it. It doesn't hurt to do it now.
No.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions, Larry, on the other project?
Sorry, one more question. I see that you're doing Greenhaven, it kind of loops all around. Then you hop over Allendale and do Meadowlands. Is Allendale okay at this point?
Yes, it is. Yep.
Okay. All right, that was my question. Thank you.
All right, anything else for staff? All right, hearing none, I need a motion to open this up for public comment.
I'll move to open the public comment portion of the hearing.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So if you want to speak to this, you have to come up to the podium, state your name and address. And I'm sure Larry will answer every question you have.
We're counting on it.
My name is Don Harvey. I live at 748 Gilfillan Lane. My question is on this assessment. What specifically, how is this assessment arrived at? Is this a guaranteed price?
So in this case, and I went over probably in better detail at the neighborhood meeting, but we can only assess up to the benefit of the improvement to your property. And in today's world, the benefit is outpaced, or the construction costs have outpaced the benefit. So in other words, construction continues to cost more and more and more, and the benefits aren't keeping up. So with the assessment, we are basing it on the benefit in this case. So if
Black and white, where are you getting these numbers from?
similar projects and similar assessment rates.
In what
And
areas?
we are doing a benefit appraisal at the moment to confirm that rate. So if that benefit appraisal shows that $4,000 is not appropriate and it's something else, we would have to change that.
Okay. If you're telling us now that it's $4,000, how do we know that this figure is valid for the future?
Well, that benefit appraisal will confirm
You
it.
keep going on this benefit. I want a specific, if you don't mind, please.
A specific what?
A specific. Where did you get this number from besides comparable areas, comparable work
Comparable areas, comparable work, comparable assessments.
by people who are going to, you expect to do this work?
By benefit and the assessment rates that were assessed on those previous projects.
Okay. Who's going to do this work, if I ask? Do you know?
We haven't, when we go out for bids, we will select the lowest responsible contractor to perform the
Okay.
work.
When I went to this first meeting several weeks ago, it was, I don't know what the initials are, TKDA or something.
That's correct.
Some company. And that, I'm asking, is that the company who is providing the information to you?
I work for TKDA. We're the consulting engineer performing the study.
Excuse me?
I work for TKDA, and our company did the study.
Oh, you do?
Yeah. But
We don't,
wouldn't
we don't
would-
have an on-staff engineer. We contract out our engineering.
Okay.
So we wouldn't be doing the work, the construction work. We're providing these recommendations and design.
Larry, if I may, there's a separate, excuse me, if I don't mind, I'm sorry. There's a separate appraiser that's been hired to determine the actual
Sorry,
benefit.
I don't, I'm unable to hear you.
Okay, can I hear, is this better? Can you hear me now? Okay, I'm trying not, I don't mean to yell, but TKDA does not do the appraisals. A separate appraiser has been hired and retained by the township to conduct a general appraisal of the benefit. That appraiser has not finished that job yet. But as Larry said, based on historical benefit analysis, that's how the estimate of $4,000 was arrived at this point in time. Also keep in mind that this is simply an estimate. This is simply an estimate.
Okay.
When the project is completed, there will be another hearing on assessments to determine the actual amount of assessment. The $4,000 you're seeing now is not the final amount. It could be more, it could be less, right? But this is simply an estimate. So just understand there's going to be another hearing after the project is completed to determine the actual assessment. Okay? So don't feel what the number you hear tonight is the final number. It's not.
So then we, the assessed people, are on the hook for whatever it is. Is that right?
Well, okay. I'm getting a little ahead of myself here, but there will be, again, when the work is completed and the final bill is determined, the town will determine the final assessment, the levied assessment. There will be another hearing as to whether or not that amount will be adopted. You have another chance to talk about that. And if you feel that the assessment is too high, you have the right to appeal that assessment under statute.
And who do I appeal it to?
District court.
Okay.
When we get that far, when we get to the next step, when we get to the next step of hearings for the levied assessment, part of that notice will tell you what you have to do. In fact, we will explain that again at that hearing as to what you have to do. Okay?
Okay.
But there is the ability to appeal the assessment. But right now, that's premature because it's only an estimate. The town board has not adopted any assessment whatsoever. That's the second step.
Okay.
All right?
I understand it better.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to clear that up for you.
Right, right. So there's going to be a bidding process.
Correct.
Correct.
And that time we will know, and you'll make a decision after the bidding is finished?
We'll have the appraisal, the benefit appraisal back. We'll have bid results back. We'll have a more comprehensive picture of the costs.
Okay. Another question. I couldn't understand. Did you ask, does the township contributing any to this?
Yes.
Yes.
They are?
Yes.
Okay. Now specifically on Gilfillan Lane, we went over that very lightly. You mentioned a lot about Greenhaven. Mm-hmm. And my question is, I'm concerned about Gilfillan Lane. You say it only needs, I don't know the exact terminology, a minimum.
A mill and
amount of
overlay, so
work.
grinding off just the surface and then repaving the surface.
Right.
And then whatever concrete is damaged, we repair that.
Right, okay. So is each unit assessed the same amount?
Yes.
And each unit was, how did you arrive at this assessment?
The number of units?
Well, you mentioned on Greenhaven that the Cub store and that
Yeah.
strip mall and that, are they paying the same assessment as we are?
They're paying the same assessment rate, but they're assigned multiple units because their frontage is larger. And so we take a residential equivalent lot width, an
Right,
area, and we see how many line up along the frontage.
right.
And so
Okay, so they're having more work done on Greenhaven than they're compared to Gilfil and Lane. So Gilfil and Lane should have a lesser assessment than Greenhaven, correct?
Well, our assessment was based on mill and overlay for everyone. So
Overlay for everyone?
mill and overlay for everyone.
But
Greenhaven,
Greenhaven's getting more work done
It is.
than Gilfil and Lane. So they're requiring more labor and time and material. But we, Gilfil and Lane, are being assessed also the same amount as Greenhaven.
yes.
So is that what you consider fair, reasonable, and proper?
I think what Larry's saying is the assessment is based on the minimal amount of work done. So in other words, you're paying for the minimal amount of work.
Well, the minimum amount of work, it's less for Gilfil and Lane than it is for Greenhaven.
Yes, and you're being assessed
So
on,
the assessment should not be the same for Gilfil and Lane as it is for Greenhaven.
I understand what you're driving at. I see. I understand
understand
your
the
point.
point.
I understand your point. Oh, yeah.
But you're not doing that, correct?
Well, understand, you're on Gilfil and Lane. You're being assessed as if you're only having a mill and overlay done. So what I'm saying is you're not picking up the cost for the extra work being done on Greenhaven. You're only paying, if I understand Larry correctly, you're only paying for what it would cost to do the mill and overlay on Gilfil.
You know, in the long run, that doesn't make sense.
That's,
All the units are equal.
Well, okay.
yeah.
There's
You
no-
know,
no,
I have a
excuse
very
me.
hard time understanding when I'm only going to require 1 hour's work, and Greenhaven's going to have require 2 hours' work, and yet I'm paying the same amount as Greenhaven?
But Larry,
You're talking to somebody who you think is a dummy.
No,
But
not.
I know what 1 and 1 makes, and it doesn't make 5.
No, we're not trying to,
Larry, is it the same amount of units on each road?
No. There's different numbers of units on each
On
roadway.
each road. So each road is going to have more units or less units assessed the same amount.
Yes.
So that breaks down to an average of the 4,000.
And I would say that if we were to make any changes and we were to assess differently for Greenhaven, it wouldn't reduce Gilfilin's assessment rate because
It's on the based on the minimum.
it's on the minimum, and Greenhaven would be assessed at a higher rate than 4,000.
My name is Wayne Callisted. I'm also on Gilfil and Lane 730. I have about 3 comments I'd like to make. The first one, somebody mentioned parking on one of your slides. The one real rub that we have in the Southwind HOA, and by the way, the last business meeting that we had, the annual meeting, it was a unanimous vote. And that is when the state fair starts parking cars at the church, or the church allows the state fair to park cars there. We want no parking signs permanently every year on Gilfil and Lane and up through Greenhaven up to the next Winton Way, Weston Woods, I guess it's called. Because there's a lot of things that happen if we don't. We don't get mail. And we have people it's solid parking. In fact, if you were to go out and take a drive now during the fair on the other side of 96 and all the way down to Weston Woods, you'd find cars lined and they'll walk in. And those are the cars that will be on our streets. So we'd be constantly crowded, which means when people return at 11 and 12 o'clock at night, maybe half inebriated, they're walking through our property. We don't want that.
Well, Wayne, the board has discussed this. And because if this construction does go, and it's going to go next fall, we have talked about the maybe the chance of just calling the state fair and eliminating that, and not allowing the church to park there for next year.
That'd be great.
And if the powers that be, maybe we can not have it again.
Yeah. Well,
Because we are getting complaints about it, and it is very disruptive.
I got to mention one more thing on parking that maybe some of the members aren't aware of. It was a number of years ago. I've been living at the association for 7 years. And before my time, a year or two before my time, there was a bunch of cars parked on Gilfil and Court up there right off of Greenhaven. And one of the houses down there had a medical emergency. And because there were so many cars parked on both sides, and they weren't necessarily parked the most neatly, the ambulance couldn't get down there. And so that's what we're also worried about is emergency vehicle service to the association when both sides of the street are lined with fair. Okay, that's all I'm going to say on the fair parking. The other thing on this unit assessment, if you take a look at a diagram of the streets, Gilfillan Lane that would be on the south side, there's 14 units. If you take a look at Greenhaven Drive, that's a longer street, and they're only assessed at 10. And so there is a little bit of, I think, not a fair assessment on the distribution of the units. Yeah. Okay. And I'm sure
Wait,
that.
Wait, let me address that because we've had this discussion on almost every road project.
Yeah.
In every assessment, everybody feels that they should be assessed lesser because they have less frontage or they have a smaller house or they have worse drive or some reason. If we were to try to individually assess, 205 units, that number alone would run this bid process up enough to run your assessment costs up because we would have to include that. So what happens is this is the reason why we blanket assessments because that's why we try to keep them in one neighborhood. So we're looking at an area that usually pretty comparable, and that's the only way a fair way of doing it. We can't literally afford to assess everybody individually. It just doesn't work.
Well, I get there's a banding. I get that. But then when there's an obvious length that's only getting assessed 10 units, where smaller areas are getting assessed 14 times, there's a discrepancy. And I would just request that be looked at again. And I think the last thing I want to say, something I didn't understand until this last meeting, at least I don't know if I still understand it. But I'm hearing you're saying that you're going to raise our tax basis of our home, right?
No.
We don't have that authority.
Yeah, that's the
That's the
county.
county.
You can't do that.
No, I think what they're saying is this, is that, well, actually, here's what we're saying, is that the town can only assess the increase in market value of the property.
Okay.
Not what the county says the market value is,
Got
but the appraisers say the increase in market value
So you
is.
don't share that with the county then? So our
No,
okay,
it's-
very good.
It's completely separate.
My misunderstanding.
No,
You
that's
cleared
a-
it up.
no,
That's
it's all
good.
Hey, you know something? It takes a long. I've tried to figure this out sometimes too. So don't worry about it. I understand what you're saying.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else?
Jim DeJardas. I live at 731 Gilfillan Lane, and a lot of what I was going to ask has been covered. I just was going to ask about, you mentioned the possibility of bump outs, Larry.
Yes.
Are you talking speed bumps or something different than that?
No, you narrow the road at strategic areas.
Okay.
And that narrowing causes the driver to feel constricted and they slow down. And so you're bringing the curb line in to narrow the road and they naturally slow down because of that. You normally try to put those at intersections where you have pedestrians that might walk across. It also has the benefit of allowing pedestrians to stay a shorter distance to cross the street. So we'd have to look at that. We'd have to look at drainage and whether it would even work. But that's an option I've seen done in these types of neighborhoods.
Yeah, I don't know if that would be good either, but I just wanted to make sure that we weren't talking about speed bumps because I think you mentioned at the last meeting more damage because of plowing and more fixing 10 years from now and more assessment. So,
right.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Sharon Lorenz, and we live at 707 Gilfillan. And I think some of my questions were already answered. I just wanted to mention that $4,000 for 50 feet of property is kind of a lot, but I realize what you're doing. I also know that at the church, there are hundreds of cars that are parked in the church and on the road. And the same. And are you not assessing the mortuary that's on the corner?
Yeah. I don't know what that business is on the corner, but they're included, yeah.
They are included. And how many units are you giving them? 2.5. 2.5?
You're talking.
Yes. And what I'm saying is that where we live, we can see right through to that. There's 6 out of 7 days that thing is full. And I'm talking they're parking in the parking lot and then move over to the church. So all those people are coming in and out all the time. And obviously you're not charging for the wear and tear on the road, different units. Because I think the church is getting 10.
I believe so. I got it.
10?
Oh, there, yeah, 10.
Yeah. And so if you think of 10, you also have Christmas, Easter, Wednesday night, hundreds of cars there for all the activities. And I'm just saying that I think that there could be people in our units that can't afford the $4,000, would be a burden on them. And I just think that you should consider, how that is how that's being taxed. So that's all I've got to say. Yeah.
Thanks, Sharon. Anyone else?
Real quick, Jerry Hicks, 4612 Greenhaven Drive. What's the classification of Greenhaven Drive? It's collector?
I don't believe so. Is it, Larry? I think it's a residential street. It's going to be
In a township, the township doesn't get state aid funds. So really all our streets are more local in nature because if the township were to receive state aid funds, we'd maybe designate some streets as more of collectors and put them on the state aid system where they would accrue state aid dollars from the state. Township isn't able to do that, so really all our streets are local streets.
Okay, well, I'm just, the only reason is because Greenhaven is back when Lund's Barley was being built, and they were changing the intersection of Centerville Road in 96. Greenhaven Drive was a racetrack from people, because of all of that construction, they were using Greenhaven Drive as a shortcut. And they were seeing if they could get up to that corner through Greenhaven Drive in the same amount of time as they could the other way. So they were speeding, and then we had semis going back and forth that way too, delivering up to Cub Foods and whatever else there is there. But so Greenhaven Drive is to me is a collector because there's nobody, Gilfillan, all the other ones, they all converge onto Greenhaven Drive and
It's a neighborhood collector, yeah.
Yeah, it's a neighborhood collector. And you just mentioned that Greenhaven Drive is going to require a total rebuild. I believe what was it? It's
Reclamation. It's not a full reconstruction, but it's removing all the pavement and replacing all the pavement.
Yeah. And luckily, from what I heard, that we're being assessed the same amount as Gilfillan, which I feel lucky about as long as it stays that way. So just my 2 cents worth on there. Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry. All right, anyone else? Going once, going twice, sold. All right, I need a motion to close the public comment portion.
I'll make a motion to close the public portion of the hearing. Comment portion.
Motion made, second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, what's the board's pleasure?
I have one more question for Larry.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I forgot. The gentleman who just spoke, my mind.
Jerry.
Made a comment about Greenhaven and gets a lot of truck traffic. Certainly Meadowlands Drive, which is part of this, gets a lot of truck traffic. Is that going to be constructed to the same standard as Greenhaven and Gilfillan and others? Or because you know there's more trucks on that, do you make it a little, is it going to be a little more robust?
For Meadowlands Drive, it's a mill and overlay project, so we wouldn't be addressing the total pavement width.
I see.
We're just doing the upper surface.
So the base is already there.
The base is already there.
But
We're not.
Larry, aren't they all both rated 9 ton?
I'd have to
Or is it
look
7?
at the report on what they had designated at, but I think,
But that's not going to change the rating, is what I'm getting at.
yeah.
I forgot the base is going to stay the same. Okay. That was
Anything
my
else, Scott?
question. Thank you.
Steve?
Well, I think this, not really, but the process tonight, we aren't to the point, the township, just so everybody, I'm clear myself, we can pull the plug on this project once we find out what the costs are going to be. And this is to get going forward so that we know what we're facing as a group. The board has wanted to continue a process of fixing our roads. Our infrastructure needs repairs. This is just an ongoing process for your neighborhood, but we're not to the point of knowing, A, what the assessment is going to be concretely, and B, we don't even know what it's going to cost us yet. And so until we get all that done, that's what tonight we have to get the process completed to the point where we can find out what people are going to try and charge us for. And then we have to make the decision going forward.
And part of this is we bond for these projects, so depending on bond pricing, depending on, there's a number of things. In fact, we've already pulled the plug on one project for next year just because we know the costs are going to be too extreme that we can't afford to bond for all of them. So we're down to these last 2 projects for next year. So this is a commitment the board made about, I would say about what, 6 years ago, 5 years?
4 or 5, yeah.
We've been kicking this can down the road a very long time, and I've been on the board for a while, and I've seen it's just as easy to say, let's do it next year, and we finally hit that next year all at once. So these are really tough to go through, but I tell you, last year we had some really good bidding, and we just don't know what bidding will be this year. That $4,000, believe it or not, that's one of the cheapest assessments we've had in 4 years.
Yes.
My road was $25,000, so it can vary. So this is probably one of the most reasonable ones we've seen come through here. Still hurts, but it's depending on how you want to run it, it can be assessed over 10 years, correct? So that kind of helps some of the pain. Brother, anything else, Steve?
No.
So tonight we're looking for 2 different resolutions, correct, Larry? The first is for ordering the improvements.
Well, based on the town engineer and staff review and recommendations, I'll make a motion to adopt the resolution ordering the improvements of 2022-6 project.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? And then the next one is the plans and specs.
Again, based on the town engineer and staff review and recommendations, adopt a resolution ordering preparation of plans and specifications.
Second.
Motion's made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Tell you what, Larry, you
I
just
want
want
to
to give us
thank
a
you
quick...
guys very much for your help.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Larry, you just want to give us a quick timeline about when you think we'll have plans and specs and when to go out for bid?
You had it.
I know, just
Yeah, just as a reminder, we'll look at another neighborhood meeting in late February or most likely early March, where we'll have better ideas on the plans, and we can share that with you.
All right, we're going to move on because we have one more of these. That's the item.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
This is the 2022 street improvements, including Hammond Road and Township Parkway. Again, I need a motion to waive the reading.
I'll make a motion to waive the reading that was properly published.
Second.
Motion made second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, then I need a motion to open the public portion.
I'll make a motion to open the public portion.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, Larry, we'll do it all over again.
All right. So this is the Hammond Road area project and includes Township Road and Hammond, Township Parkway and Hammond Road. The project is roughly a mile in length. It was originally constructed in 1992 and 2001. And it's primarily industrial property, residential property on the east side of Hammond near Otter Lake Road. There are trails along the Township Parkway and Hammond Road. We do have a railroad crossing on Township Parkway. There's heavier vehicle loading in this roadway. Concrete barrier curb on all the roadways, and varying street width. We again went through the process of doing a geotechnical report for this area, and through that process, we also did a utility evaluation, questionnaires again, all the same things we did with Gilfillan area. And then we looked at the improvements and performed cost calculations, and we looked at actually 3 different options. We looked at a mill and overlay, again, the grinding of the surface and repaving. Reclamation, which is kind of where we thought we were going to go when we started this process, is a full depth reclamation of the pavement. Again, minor utility repair, curb and gutter repair, trail improvements, and driveway and yard restoration. What we found, and this is the kind of the good news, bad news, we found bituminous base was in really good condition. And so we don't really need to do for the pavement a pavement reclamation. We're more at a point where we could do a mill and overlay on this project. But the bad news is the curb and gutter was in poor condition throughout the project area. All the degradation of the joints is occurring throughout the roadway. So kind of left with kind of deciding what to do, we computed 3 different estimates. A general mill and overlay, which the pavement core support, a mill and overlay but replacing the curb, which would mean we would have to saw cut the pavement and replace all the curb. But when you do that, in the future, down the line, 15 years, you're going to have a seam, 3 feet out from the curb. So weren't really thinking that was a great idea. So we did compute the cost for reclamation with replacement of the curb. Kind of through that process and talking with staff and Public Works, we're recommending the mill and overlay at this point and trying to address the driveways and repairing the driveway concrete, but holding off on the curb and gutter until that next repair. We're recommending trail improvements and pedestrian ramp upgrades, and Ramsey County does support the trail and pedestrian upgrade improvements in talking with them. I mentioned the concrete driveway entrances we'd look to do. And some of the public comments we received on this roadway section was cost concerns and parking. So these are a few photographs of the curb and gutter and the entrances. You can see the concrete deteriorating at the joints and also at the joints for the entrances. So when we do the cost estimates for the 3 options, we have a range. We go from $1 million for the mill and overlay up to 1.9 for the reclamation when we replace with replacement of all the curb. Again, we're recommending the mill and overlay at this time. We did an evaluation, and this is a mainly commercial district, but we computed the accessible units along all the frontage. And so we have some residential units that are assessed to 1 unit each, as you'd expect, but then we have the properties with larger frontages that were assessed multiple units. And then we're recommending a unit assessment of $4,000 for the mill and overlay. But if we went to other improvements, with greater improvements, there's greater benefit. And so we would look at larger assessments for a mill and overlay with curb replacement or a reclamation project. So this is the unit assessment map. It shows the number of units for each parcel. We do have a number of parcels with multiple units because it's a largely commercial area or industrial area. So breaking down the costs using, and I'm going to focus on the mill and overlay. We're looking at assessments of just over $300,000. Township funds of $650,000. And then our utility funds pick up some costs for other minor improvements to the utilities. So again, the total is just over $1 million. I want a note of for the trail improvements. That amount is $250,000 of this work, just for your information. So this would follow a similar schedule as Gilfillan. We would look at holding the public hearing tonight, completing plans and specifications for bidding in late March, April timeframe, awarding a bid in May, and starting construction June, July. And again, the same type of communications as Gilfillan with newsletters going out to property owners, special notices for concrete work. In a commercial district, access to their parcels is going to be important to maintain their businesses. And we did have a neighborhood meeting last week, and there was only one person that participated or showed up, and they were a business owner, and that was their primary concern. They didn't have concerns about assessments, but their concern was maintaining access during construction, and they have one access. So we would have to pour their concrete access one half at a time in order to accommodate their access during construction. So again, this is similar steps in holding the public hearing, and then 4/5 votes for ordering the improvements, and then authorizing preparation of plans and specifications. And I can answer your questions.
Yeah.
I know we talked about this extensively at one of the executive meetings, and you just made a comment that made me think maybe I misheard. If we're pouring, the recommendation is to go with the mill and overlay over both streets. And when you say we would be pouring concrete, is that to repair some of the damages that we see? And is that a smaller scale than what the other option was of replacing curb and gutter?
So what we're looking at, and I have a picture of it here, is the entrances. With the cost estimate for the mill and overlay, we didn't include full concrete curb replacement, but we did include entrance improvements for the concrete entrances that are seeing the same issues that the curb is seeing.
Okay, all right, thank you. And secondly, when I was looking at the funding sources, the storm actually was a pretty small piece. So are we, I'm guessing, I'm just asking you all or the engineers, we're comfortable that the water runoff is okay and it's not really a major contribution to the damage that we're seeing on the concrete curb and gutters?
No, the lower number, this is as a mill and overlay project, you just don't see as much storm sewer improvements with this type of project. We'll repair the rings and the catch basins themselves, but we're not going to build any new catch basins or structures for this project.
I see. So then if you did the reclamation, then the storm jumps up dramatically. Okay, now I got you. Okay. I had another question I can't remember now, so I'll pass.
Larry, what's the, I know it's a shoot from the hip, but what's the average, you think you can get 20 years out of mill and overlay?
That's the idea, and that's if we do crack sealing at the appropriate time and seal coating, we're gonna try to extend that life to that 20 years.
And that gets to the point where, will the concrete curb and gutter hold up for that 20 years?
And that's what I was going to ask, is,
Yeah.
you know, you've looked at how much of that curb and gutter along that road, forgetting the driveway ins and outs.
It's nearly every joint. Township Parkway's in better condition than Hammond Road. But on Hammond Road, nearly every joint is failing. And so you can see on the picture on the left, Public Works has patched in bituminous in some of those joints. What I want to explore with, if this proceeds tonight, is some other type of repair that we could explore for those joints, and not replacing everything, but maybe doing something that can last longer.
Okay, yep, and I guess that was the question. So if we do the mill and overlay, do not do the curb business other than at the driveways, if you get 10 years out of it, we're going to be right back to where we.
On the curb wall. Talking with Public Works, we'll get to 20 by doing repairs on that concrete. It's just more maintenance for them.
That's still dollars, and
Yeah.
whether it's hidden in our overhead or not, we're still spending it somehow.
Yeah.
As a general rule, if you're doing a reclamation anywhere, do you always replace all the concrete curb and gutter?
No.
But in this case, you likely would.
In this case, we likely would because of the condition. And then it turns more into a full reconstruction at that point. But
I guess that's a good point. So let me rephrase my question. If you were doing a reconstruction, generally speaking, do you replace the curb and gutter? Okay.
Go back to that slide that you had those three options on it, one of which was reclamation. So in that,
you want the funding table?
yeah.
I mean, I'm hearing maybe some apprehension of this project. If the board isn't comfortable with the mill and overlay, and that they think the curb is going to be too problematic for maintenance, then I guess I would recommend holding on this project completely and getting more life out of that pavement, because the pavement cores are in such good condition that it would be hard to justify doing a reclamation at this point. But it's
Well, it appeared from those photographs that the entrances into the businesses are very bad. And you've been repairing, or Township has been repairing, are they all that shape?
maybe not as bad as this one, but they're having issues.
Larry, what's the road rating on those two right now?
The road rating, it was in one of these slides, 1.80 to 2.68.
Which is right where we want to replace them.
Well,
I just hate
the
spending
core
good money
suggests
after.
that we can get, on the pavement side, another 20 years. I see your point on the curb, that it may not last that long, but just talking with Public Works, they understand that there may be some more maintenance involved with keeping those curbs up to date. And if you proceed with the mill and overlay, I'll explore options for different types of improvements just at those joints.
Is it just asphalt patching, or can they concrete patch them?
That's what I want to explore.
I found that usually thinner, smaller pieces of concrete that are patched in don't hold up. They pop. Couldn't make it easy, could you, Larry?
I did think of my other question. On the trail, would that just be a overlay, or would that be a mill and overlay? Or when you say improvements, are you going to be sealed? No, you wouldn't. We already seal coat that. What would you be doing to it?
I'd have to look at the estimate again. It could be a mill and or it could be an overlay, or but all those pedestrian ramps would be pulled out,
Okay,
upgraded to current standards.
that part I get.
The trail
The
itself, I'd have to look at the estimate on how she addressed the trail
Okay.
costs.
Last question, kind of veering in a different direction. What's the parking issue? You said the concerns on parking. There's not,
It was at 1307, I believe, which is Precision Metals. And they were at the neighborhood meeting, and that was news to them.
I was going to say,
So
I've never heard any complaint or issues on parking on Hammond.
I've never seen a car parked
I've
on
never
there.
either.
Well, there's an entry into Tamarack off of Hammond. And I see cars parked there once in a while.
Where people walk into
Yeah.
there? Oh, okay.
But that's the only time I've ever seen a car parked there.
But there's never more than one or two.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Okay, so it's really not the biggest issue. It's more of if we want to just do mill and overlay or scratch it.
Or nothing.
And the assessment was only, what, another $1,000?
No, it was, now I
Did
don't
it go
remember.
from 4 to 5?
That was with curb
Right.
cutting,
It went from 4 to 5. I
not
thought.
the reclamation one. That
No.
was
reclamation was 8.
8. Yeah.
Oops.
Yeah, from 4 to 5. Mill and overlay with curb replacement.
And we'll get that cut.
The reclamation is the first column, it's 8,000. Mill and over is the second column, and then the third column, which is the $5,000 assessment, is mill and overlay with curb
And
replacement.
that's the one you don't recommend because of the shifting.
Can you show the breakout for our share? I'm trying to do the math, and so we would go at 400, 350.
So by your discussion tonight, the reclamation is not warranted
For the pavement.
for the pavement. So we're down to those other two options, basically. Because there's a lot of life left in the road itself.
But the road condition itself is down at a 2 or under,
Yeah,
which is where we drew the line about getting them done.
yeah.
So me personally, I don't see any other options. Just go mill and overlay and hope the Public Works can keep those curb and gutter intact.
Yeah,
And put the best plow guy on them.
I agree. I don't,
All right, so that sounds like a consensus.
There is an audience member that may.
Yeah, well, I haven't opened up for public yet, but any other questions, Larry?
no.
All right, then I need a motion to open up for public comment.
I'll make a motion to open the public comment portion of this hearing.
Second.
Motion made and second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
He said no.
All right, Mr. Yonke, you got an interest in this? You want to step up?
Oh,
Key Planning and Development Director, Ramsey County. Just sitting in here observing for tonight. I guess my question would be, I know you, Larry, you did not go into it very specifically when you're talking about trail improvements. I would like to understand what you're actually meaning on trail improvements. And I'm assuming you're talking about the trail on the north side of Hammond Road that's directly adjacent to Tamarack Nature Center.
That one I do see it gets a lot of use.
Or are you talking about another trail?
It's both trails on Township Parkway and on Hammond Road. Our engineer's estimate, we computed cost for a three-inch bituminous trail. So,
Single depth?
well, that's to be determined with design, but
Okay.
so that currently does not have the ADA at the corners? Is that what you're
not to
saying?
current standards.
Not to the current standards. Those current standards would be what you put on H2, I assume? I mean, that's the same current standards where the trail comes down into the roadway?
Our trails are designed case-by-case scenario depending on the use. Now, as far as the trails along H2, are you specifically talking about the ones that come out of the Tamarack facility or are you talking about?
No, it is really to the east. They did some work on the for handicap accessibility at the corners of Prospect, Cottage, Lakeview. I think they put.
That section I'm unaware. It's not within our park system, but typically park system, depending on the trail use, we typically go with a 3-inch single full depth trail on that one, unless it's required for a safety type emergency use. Then it's a heavier depth trail.
So our estimate is computed based on a kind of full replacement of the trail. Now, if we can look at options for doing some leveling courses and then overlay, we can look at that as an option too.
How thick is that trail?
Um,
How thick's the existing asphalt?
we didn't take cores of that.
Okay.
More than likely not good, he says.
Well, so obviously that's not a mill and overlay thing you could do on that trail. It's either cap it or tear it out and redo it.
It gets
Cap it or replace it, yeah.
Yeah, it does get a lot of use. So now's the time.
All right, obviously there's no one else here, so I need a motion to close the public portion.
I'll move to close the public portion of the hearing.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, are there any other questions of Larry or staff or the attorney?
Not yet, but I'm sure there will be.
All right, well, I do hear kind of a consensus that I think we're going to move with just the mill and overlay.
Yes.
Is that how that resolution read? I guess I got to look here.
Yeah, I don't
You
know.
should read the resolution.
Yeah.
It just says street improvements.
Yeah, what is the
This
resolution?
is kind of vague.
I think it just states street improvements.
Yep, that's all I see. So part of your motion would be to,
Yeah, based on town engineer and staff review and recommendations, the board would adopt a resolution ordering the improvements of 2022-6 for mill and overlay on the I guess it's on the Hammond Road and Township Parkway Project 2022-6.
Second.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed? All right, then also on the plans and specs?
Based on town engineer and staff review and recommendations, adopt resolution ordering preparation of plans and specifications as for the same project as noted in the 2022-6 resolution ordering the improvements
For mill and overlay.
for mill and overlay.
Second.
Motion's made and second, all in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? All right, that motion carries. All right, moving on. Item 8A is Public Works Maintenance Position. I believe we have a new hire to fill a spot.
We do, Mr. Chair, presenting to you our newest employee with Public Works, Ben Markey. We did go through interviews after receiving, I think it was 22 or 23 applications in total for the position. We went through interviews about a week ago, finished them up. Mr. Markey fit the qualifications that we were looking for perfectly. He is working for a large municipality at this point. He has passed his background, no prohibitions on any of the functions that we require from him. He is currently in the drug test protocol with his current employer, but if the board feels more comfortable having him take a drug test specific to being here, we can do that and make his employment contingent upon that test.
Isn't that our policy no matter where they come from?
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
But we'd like to get him going as soon as possible, so he's waiting on giving notice until We've brought this across your desk this evening, and he will be joining us in hopefully 2 weeks.
All right, board have any questions, comments?
No.
And this fills our vacancies, right?
Sure does. We'll be full staffed again.
All right, hearing none, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion based on staff recommendations, approve the hiring of Benjamin Marcus, is that how you pronounce it?
Marquis.
Marquis, contingent upon his criminal background check, pre-employment physical, and drug and alcohol test.
Second.
All right, motion made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries.
Thanks, gentlemen.
All right, open time. Everybody's left the building. Item 11, I need a motion to receive agenda materials and supplements.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned at 8:50.